Alright, how's it going? My name's Dominick Gendusa, and I'm going to talk about 10 different stocks today over 2 different industries. The first industry will be electric vehicle manufacturers, and the second industry will be solar manufacturers as far as the solar panels going on residential roofs and whatnot. I wanted to have a residential emphasis. So the first industry, I want to put out the one disclaimer that out of all electric vehicle manufacturers that I chose, only one of them derives 100% of its revenue from the sale or manufacture of fully electric vehicles, and that'll be Tesla. We'll get to them last. Otherwise, the other 4 companies are your traditional automakers, some of which are located out of Japan, and all of those own a considerable market share as far as electric vehicles and the specific vehicles that they make. So starting off, we're going to go with Nissan Motor Corp. Nissan did pretty good. They have a pretty steady ROE over the 5 years that I analyzed them. However, their ROA is decreasing, and I think that's due to the decreasing total asset turnover from 2011 to 2015. They show more stability than they actually show progression, in my opinion. And as far as the type of investor that I am, I look for future progress opposed to stability, although stability is, a pretty important factor. And then another thing that I noticed is that they're able to get their weighted average cost of capital headed down while the equity multiplier stays level. So they must be doing something with their cash or financing their operations without increasing the amount of leverage that they have. And for all the stocks that I actually go over, I look at ROE specifically. Then I go to ROA, the WACs, and then I look at progress because I want to see what type of speculation the stock has opposed to just buying a long haul stock. I'm more of a short-term outlook type of investor. And then I want to see if they're going to meet the investor's needs as far as how much the investor looks to get out of the company and what they're actually providing. So we'll be kind of looking at them from those metrics, although we pulled all the different metrics possible and the ratios of profitability, asset efficiency, leverage, liquidity, and then market value. 9 out of 10 of my stocks don't even have dividends, so you won't hear me talking much about those. And gauging the price 1 year from now was also pretty difficult to do, being that most of these are pretty speculative stocks, and some of them don't even have positive earnings to be able to calculate, the PE times the earnings per share. So that's Nissan Motor Company. Let's have a look at how they're doing with the WACC compared to the economic value added compared to the return on invested capital. One thing, overall it looks pretty stable. But one thing I do want to point out is that if they continue this trend here, I think we should be all right longer term, because they'll be able to actually drive down their cost of capital while packing value into the company and getting more return on the capital that we invest. So next up, we're going to talk about Mitsubishi Motors Corp. Now, when I started looking at ROE, Mitsubishi kind of took the lead. However, that's only in the past 2 years. 3 out of 5 years, they didn't post any ROE, as it shows there, with 0%. But I do think, as far as their ROA is concerned, because I went from ROE to ROA, as far as the ROA is concerned, I think it's driven mainly by their increasing profit margins. Which overall, when you look at all the different metrics, it's a strong pick when you're trying to pick the best company as far as ratios are concerned by the numbers. But I'll show you why it wasn't the best pick here in a little bit when we get to Toyota. The future price that I calculated a year from now would be about $9.12, and about half these stocks I wasn't even anywhere close to some of what the other market analysis platforms were coming up with. So I could be missing some data, or they can have some different data. I guess we'll find out. But let's head on to the next company. Before that, we'll take a look at Mitsubishi's their chart as far as WACC, EVA, and ROIC. Everything's kind of uptrending here, and something else I want to point out is that in 2012, you'll notice a bunch of the automakers have a similar dip between the economic value added and return on invested capital. I don't know why that is. I didn't really look into it too far, but I did notice that the two best companies kind of avoided that dip, being Mitsubishi and Toyota, which you'll see later on. But it's all trending upward, and the WACC is starting to separate itself from the return on invested capital and the EVA. I'd like to see it get a little bit lower, but we'll see over time. So the next company is General Motors. I was actually really surprised by the numbers I received from General Motors. You know, it's been around forever. It's an American car manufacturing company. I think the assumption is that it's just naturally an awesome pick. But I actually personally thought that it was a poor performer. If you look at all the ratios, it's kind of headed in a negative direction. They started off in 2010. Now, granted, let's back up. They did have to contend with the bailout. I forget which year that is, but I'm sure they're still paying for that time over time. But I think they're losing some of their competitive edge. In 2010, they had an ROE of 20. 2014, they closed out with an ROE of 8%. They're doing all this while pushing out the same, if not slightly less, as far as total asset turnover, and their profit margins are decreasing. So I'm not quite sure what's going on with GM. And at 3.8%, the times interest earned, it's not looking good. I mean, they can barely afford their debts. So this would definitely not be a pick for me. And even if the numbers were a little bit better, I still wouldn't pick them either way, because I think they're just too stuck in their ways and they're not looking forward as far as electric vehicles are concerned. Moving on to their chart, there's that 2012 dip I was talking about, and you'll see this between all the other companies, minus Mitsubishi and Toyota, and slightly trending downwards, a little less than stable. So they need to get that cost of capital down and start trying to pack some more value back into the company and retain some of their earnings. I also want to mention, as far as supply chains concerned, the first three stocks that we've gone over, there were no concerns with respects to supply chain. They're all pretty standard. They have their buyers, they have their sellers. Nothing that really stuck out to me. Finally, we'll get to Toyota. That's pick 4 out of 5. Toyota comes to the market with the Prius. Like I said, between Mitsubishi and Toyota, I started off with ROE. Toyota naturally, over time, if you average it out, they had a better ROE. But it's all in all a little bit higher than Mitsubishi's. Going down to ROA, I think the lower equity multiplier and others can, let me back up a second. Going to ROA, they've started off 2011 and 12 were kind of iffy. They got some pretty high percentages there, and I don't know what really is driving that. Just might have been an opportune time in the market for them. But 2013 through 15, they were able to increase their return on assets, all while increasing their profit margins. So that looks pretty good for them. Total asset turnover is the same, sales are maintaining the same, and they're even kind of backing down from their amount of leverage, their equity multiplier, slightly, but at least they're stepping in the right direction. What blew me away about Toyota and kind of won the cake for them was their ability to afford their debt at 120 times interest earned. But all in all, pretty good company and a low weighted average cost of capital, which means, while the investor is important to them, they're not constantly shelling out trying to meet that demand. I also like to look at we'll head to their WACC ROIC chart. And similar to Mitsubishi, and as I pointed out before, they avoided the 2012 dip that the other auto manufacturers went through. But they are also headed a little more sharply in the right direction than Mitsubishi is, as far as, you know, getting the cost of capital down while increasing, you know, economic value added and the return on invested capital. So no concerns in respect to supply chain as far as Toyota is concerned, and they were the best pick for this industry, just due, you know, to the ratios alone. But that leaves us with Tesla Motor Corp, which is pretty much the reason I chose this industry at all. I wanted to actually, now that I, you know, had some sense about the ratios and what I'm looking for, instead of just picking the company based off of a hunch, I wanted to actually look at the numbers. No surprise to me, as long as I've been following Tesla, that the numbers are what they are. I mean, they have no return on equity, no return on, everything's negative. They haven't posted a single earnings, but people keep buying Tesla because it's a very speculative stock, which is why I've also learned from experience that you know, negative news affects the value of the stock so quickly. They are, one thing, you know, there are a couple things to take away from Tesla. Overall, you know, they were terrible as far as the metrics are concerned, but it's a speculative company, so that's okay. That's my risk preference, so, you know, I don't necessarily shy away from this upon first sight. But there are a couple of positives in my opinion. They're maintaining their leverage. It's not getting any worse. So the amount of cash they're getting in from the stocks, I think they're using it positively. And something else that, you know, I know because I follow it, is that they've been shelling out hundreds of millions for a plant expansion, and you'll see with their supply chain what makes them special. But they're constantly spending money, and they get beat up really bad when they don't make the sales that everybody thinks they're going to make. But long haul, I think this is the future as far as automobiles are concerned. And they've actually, you know, from 2011 to 12, they took a small increase on their cost of capital, but 13 to 14, they got it back down. So the fact that they're, you know, spending all that money tells me that they're trying, they're in the right direction. And I mean, they slightly can't afford their debt if you look at the Times interest earned. But all in all, a very speculative company. So let's look at their chart. I mean, this is all over the place. As I said, the WACC is kind of pretty much stable, hopefully getting better. While their economic value added has decreased over time, they've been able to slightly increase their return to the shareholders of, you know, on invested capital. So I guess that's some positive outlook. And then in regards to the supply chain, I want to point something out here. They have no buyers. Tesla has a business model that is direct to the consumer. So if I want a car, I don't go to a dealership, I get it straight from Tesla. There's no middleman. And this is part of their scheme, and their whole business model is how can we cut out the middleman to put out these cars that we're making, these fully electric vehicles, 100% electric, which are hands down, cost to mileage available, the best cars out there, pretty much. They're just having a tough time selling them due to the price points. Regardless, they only get what they absolutely need. Otherwise, something you'll notice about Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, is that he makes what he can in-house. That's the whole reason for opening or building that entire Tesla battery factory in Nevada, costing them hundreds of millions of dollars. So I think they're just pretty much trudging through it at this point. As long as they can keep selling vehicles and then keep, you know, the market happy, I think they'll be all right in the long run. I hope so. It's one of my personal holdings, so we'll see what happens.